Welcome to the Forged Over 40 podcast. My name is Steve Didier, and this show is for high performers who refuse to let their edge erode quietly. Today's episode is for the women. If you're a woman over 40 who feels like your energy, strength, focus, or resilience has shifted and no one can give you a clear answer, this episode is where I'm going to show you how to rebuild the biological system that your performance depends on a physiological level. Let's start with the truth that most women aren't told clearly. The energy crash after 40 is very real. It is not laziness, it's not lack of discipline, it's not a mindset issue, and it's certainly not just normal aging. But it is biological. And what makes this particularly frustrating for high-performing women is this. You are often doing everything right. You're working out. You're eating relatively clean. You're managing career, family, responsibilities. You're pushing through fatigue like you always have. And yet, something feels different. You don't recover like you used to. Sleep is lighter. Fat loss is harder. Brain fog creeps in. Afternoon crashes hit harder. Mood feels less stable. And when you bring it up, well, you're told it's normal. You're told it's stress. You're told it's aging. You're told your labs look fine. That combination is infuriating because high performers don't accept vague answers. Here's what's actually happening. Between roughly 35 and 50, women begin entering perimenopause, a transitional period that can last a decade or more before menopause officially occurs. During this phase, hormone levels don't simply decline, they fluctuate. Estrogen can spike unpredictably and then crash. Progesterone often declines earlier and more steadily. Testosterone, yes, women produce it too, gradually decreases. Thyroid signaling becomes more vulnerable to stress. Cortisol becomes more volatile. And that fluctuation affects every energy system in the body. Estrogen influences mitochondrial function and glucose metabolism. Progesterone affects sleep depth and nervous system calm. Testosterone influences drive, confidence, and muscle preservation. Thyroid hormone regulates metabolic rate and cerebral energy production. Cortisol determines how resilient you are under pressure. When those signals become unstable, energy becomes unstable. Not because you're weak, but because your system is shifting. Now let's layer modern life on top of all that. High-performing women over 40 are often at peak responsibility. Senior leadership roles, growing businesses, raising teenagers, managing households, aging parents. Stress load is at an all-time high. Chronic stress suppresses progesterone. It increases cortisol. It impairs thyroid conversion, and it worsens insulin resistance. So now you have hormonal fluctuation plus chronic stress plus modern lifestyle. And what does the fitness industry tell you to do? More cardio, eat less, push harder, burn more calories. That advice was mediocre at 25 years of age. At 45, it can be destructive. Excessive cardio elevates cortisol. Aggressive dieting impairs thyroid signaling. Low protein reduces muscle preservation. Undereating worsens insulin resistance over time. And then when energy tanks further, you're told to try another supplement. And this is exactly why we need to reset the narrative. Women over 40 do not need to shrink themselves. They need to stabilize their physiology. They need muscle. They need metabolic flexibility. They need insulin sensitivity. They need regulated cortisol. They need properly assessed hormones. And they absolutely do not need to accept decline as inevitable. Strength becomes non-negotiable, not for aesthetics, for longevity. Muscle mass is one of the strongest predictors of long-term metabolic health, insulin sensitivity, and cognitive resilience. When estrogen fluctuates, maintaining muscle becomes even more important because muscle is metabolic currency. Now, here's the empowering part. None of this means your best years are behind you. It just means your strategy has got to change. The approach that worked at 30 will not work at 45. And it's not because you're broken or anything like that. It's because your biology is evolving. In this episode, we're going to break down exactly what's happening hormonally and metabolically and why mainstream advice fails women over 40. We're also going to talk about how to rebuild strength, brain health, and sustainable energy using a physiology-first framework. This is not about hacks. This is about architecture. And in this next segment, we're going to unpack what perimenopause and hormonal fluctuation actually do at a cellular level, so you understand what's shifting and why the just push harder advice is so misguided. Perimenopause is not a light switch. It is a neurological and hormonal recalibration that can last 8 to 12 years. And most women have no idea it's happening because the medical system treats menopause like a date on a calendar instead of a decade-long transition. Here's what shifts first in most women. Progesterone begins to decline. Progesterone is not just a pregnancy hormone. It is a calming, stabilizing hormone. It supports deep sleep. It modulates GABA in the brain, which helps regulate anxiety. It buffers the stress response. When progesterone drops, sleep often becomes lighter. You wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. Your mind starts racing. You feel wired but exhausted. This is not weakness. This is hormonal signaling changing. And now let's talk estrogen. Estrogen does not just decline smoothly. It fluctuates. It can spike higher than it ever was in your 20s and then crash. Estrogen affects mitochondrial function. It influences glucose metabolism. It supports synaptic plasticity in the brain. When it fluctuates wildly, your energy fluctuates, your mood fluctuates, your focus fluctuates. And when estrogen crashes, you may feel flat, foggy, and unmotivated. But because labs are often run at a single time point, and because normal ranges are so damn broad, you're told that everything looks fine. And then there's testosterone. Women produce testosterone in smaller amounts than men, but it is critical. It influences drive, assertiveness, libido, muscle mass, and cognitive confidence. Gradual testosterone decline can feel like loss of edge, less initiative, less spark, less competitive drive. Again, not because you're less capable, but because signaling changed. And now we're going to layer in thyroid function into this. Thyroid hormone regulates metabolic rate on the cellular level. Women are significantly more prone to thyroid dysfunction than men. Chronic stress, nutrient deficiencies, and autoimmune tendencies can impair conversion of T4 into active T3. So you may have normal TSH, but poor tissue-level thyroid activation. That means lower cellular energy output, which means fatigue, which means brain fog. And because reference ranges are so wide, you're told you're fine. Now let's bring cortisol into this whole equation. During perimenopause, the nervous system often becomes more stress sensitive. Lower progesterone means less buffering of cortisol. So the same stress that you would tolerate at 35 now hits much harder at 45. You feel more wired, more reactive, less resilient. Chronic cortisol elevation impairs thyroid conversion. It worsens insulin resistance. It disrupts sleep. It desensitizes dopamine receptors. So now your energy system becomes unstable from multiple angles. And this is exactly why the eat less and move more advice is so damaging here. Undereating stresses the system further. Excessive cardio elevates cortisol further. Overtraining impairs recovery further. And then women blame themselves. That narrative needs to die. You are not broken. You are transitioning. But that transition must be supported intelligently. Here's something that most people won't say clearly. Hormone replacement therapy, when done properly and based on comprehensive labs, can absolutely be life-changing for some women. But throwing estrogen or progesterone or testosterone at a system that's metabolically unstable, it's insulin resistant, chronically stressed, and sleep deprived, is not optimization. It's layering intervention on top of dysfunction. The system must be stabilized first. Blood sugar regulated, sleep improved, strength training structured, stress load managed. Then hormone therapy, if needed, becomes far more effective and safer. This is why I don't demonize hormones And at the same time, I don't worship them. They are simply tools. But tools only work when the foundation is solid. So if you're a high-performing woman over 40 and you feel like your energy is inconsistent, your recovery slower, your mood less stable, your drive slightly dulled, this is not imaginary. It's biological recalibration. And now we're going to have some fun and dismantle the training and dieting advice that makes all of this so much worse. Because this is where high-performing women get sabotaged. You hit 42, 45, 48, your 50s, and you notice fat loss is harder. Energy is lower. Recovery is slower. So what does the mainstream fitness world tell you? Do more cardio, eat less, burn more calories, try intermittent fasting, add more high-intensity interval training. That approach might create some short-term scale movement, but physiologically, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. Let's break this down. During perimenopause, estrogen fluctuates and progesterone declines. That already increases your stress sensitivity. When you layer aggressive calorie restriction on top of that, the body perceives threat. When it perceives threat, cortisol rises. Thyroid conversion slows. Leptin signaling drops. Insulin sensitivity can worsen in the long term. You may initially lose weight, but your energy is going to tank, your sleep's going to get worse, muscle mass is going to decline, and eventually your fat loss stalls. So now you're exhausted and frustrated. Then comes a cardio trap. Endless spin classes, daily high-intensity circuits, orange lights, loud music, maximum output. Look, here's the deal. Cardio is not evil, but excessive high-intensity work elevates cortisol. When your cortisol is already volatile, you don't need more stimulation, you need regulation. Chronic elevated cortisol promotes central fat storage. It impairs thyroid conversion. It disrupts sleep, and it reduces muscle preservation, which brings us to muscle. Muscle is not vanity. Muscle is metabolic insurance. After 40, women naturally lose lean mass unless resistance training is intentional and progressive. Lower estrogen makes muscle maintenance harder. So if you're under eating and overdoing cardio, you accelerate muscle loss. Less muscle means lower resting metabolic rate, less glucose disposal capacity, more blood sugar instability, more fatigue, more frustration. And so you eat less again, and the spiral continues. So let's chat about fasting for a moment. Intermittent fasting can be useful in certain contexts, but aggressive fasting layered on chronic stress, poor sleep, and hormonal fluctuation can worsen cortisol instability in women. If you already wake up tired at 3 a.m., skipping breakfast and stacking caffeine on an empty stomach is not strategic. It's stress stacking. And then there's the shrink yourself narrative, the idea that smaller equals healthier. For high-performing women over 40, that mentality is a little backwards. The goal here is not to shrink, it's to strengthen. Strong glutes, strong legs, strong back, strong nervous system, strong metabolic capacity. Strength training done intelligently becomes the anchor. 3 to 4 sessions per week, progressive overload, controlled volume, recovery respected. Longer rest periods with no annihilation workouts. The goal here is stimulus, not flat-out exhaustion. When strength training is programmed correctly, insulin sensitivity improves, mitochondrial density increases, bone density improves, cognitive resilience improves, and muscle mass is preserved. That changes the whole metabolic equation. Then we can layer in movement, not punishment, movement, daily walking, low-intensity aerobic work. This improves oxidative capacity without overloading the stress response. And now, let's take a shot at the diet culture narrative. Low fat, low protein, high carb, clean eating is disastrous here. Protein becomes critical, and I do mean critical, not optional. Protein supports muscle retention. It stabilizes blood sugar. It supports satiety. It protects metabolic rate. Women over 40 often underconsume protein significantly, and that must change. Carbohydrates, they're not evil, but they must be structured, balanced with protein, timed intelligently, not constant grazing. When blood sugar stabilizes, energy stabilizes. When energy stabilizes, mood stabilizes. And when mood stabilizes, training improves. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Some of the advice that women followed faithfully for 20 years was just plain wrong for this phase of life. And that doesn't mean you failed. It means the strategy must evolve. So let's take some time to talk about your brain. Because when women over 40 describe what scares them most, it's not always body composition. It's brain fog. It's walking into a room and forgetting why. It's losing words mid-sentence. It's rereading emails. It's feeling less sharp in meetings. That's the part that hits identity. And again, this is not imaginary. Estrogen plays a direct role in synaptic plasticity. This means how efficiently your neurons communicate. It influences the formation of dendritic spines, little branches that allow brain cells to connect and share information. So when estrogen fluctuates, those connections fluctuate. That can feel like mental inconsistency, sharp one day, foggy the next. And now layer progesterone decline into this. Progesterone supports GABA activity. GABA, which stands for gamma-aminobutyric acid, is inhibitory and calming. When progesterone drops, the brain can feel more wired, more anxious, more easily overstimulated. That reduces cognitive bandwidth. And then we need to consider insulin sensitivity as well. The brain relies heavily on glucose. If blood sugar spikes and then crashes, cognitive clarity crashes with it. You can't think clearly on unstable fuel. And when estrogen declines, insulin resistance risk increases. So even women who never had blood sugar issues begin noticing afternoon crashes. This is metabolic brain fog, not a motivation problem. Now let's talk about inflammation for a minute. Chronic stress, poor sleep, visceral fat accumulation, and unstable blood sugar all increase systemic inflammation. Inflammation affects the blood-brain barrier. It affects neurotransmitter production. It affects mitochondrial efficiency inside neurons. So if you feel mentally slower, we don't just look at hormones. We look at inflammatory load. And sleep becomes critical here. Deep sleep supports lymphatic clearance. That is the brain's waste disposal system. If sleep is fragmented because progesterone is low and cortisol is high, metabolic waste accumulates. You wake up mentally dull, and then you blame yourself instead of addressing your sleep architecture. Strength training helps here. Again, it improves insulin sensitivity. It increases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. BDNF supports neuronal growth and resilience. So lifting weights, it's not just about muscle. It's about brain preservation. And let's be clear about something. Cognitive decline is not an inevitable midlife destiny. But passive lifestyle plus hormonal fluctuation plus chronic stress absolutely accelerates it. This is why the strategy must be layered. Stable protein intake supports neurotransmitter production. Adequate dietary fat supports hormone synthesis. Structured carbohydrates stabilize fuel delivery. Intelligent training improves mitochondrial density. Stress regulation improves vagal tone. Hormone therapy, when appropriate and properly monitored, can support synaptic health and cognitive clarity. But it all must be integrated into a stable metabolic system, not used as a shortcut. Now here's something empowering. The brain remains plastic, even after menopause, even into your 60s and after. When sleep improves, insulin sensitivity improves, muscle mass increases, and stress load decreases, cognitive clarity improves. This is observable. Women who lift progressively, eat enough protein, regulate stress, and optimize hormones often report sharper thinking in their late 40s and 50s than they had in their mid-30s, because now the system is supported, not abused. The myth that women must accept brain fog as part of aging is lazy thinking. It's convenient and is plain wrong. Now, we step into the most emotionally charged part of this whole conversation. Hormones. Because this is where fear, misinformation, dogma, and ego all collide. You have one camp saying that hormones are dangerous and unnecessary. Another camp saying that every single woman over 40 needs them immediately. Somewhere in the middle are high-performing women who just want clarity. So let's cut through the noise. Hormones are not the enemy. Hormones are not magic. They are signals. And when those signals drift far enough from optimal, symptoms appear. Sleep disruption, brain fog, mood volatility, loss of libido, stubborn fat gain, loss of muscle tone. But here's where most people get it wrong. They jump straight into hormone therapy without stabilizing the system. Or they refuse hormone therapy entirely because of outdated fears. Both of those extremes are lazy. Here's the physiology. If cortisol is chronically elevated, it suppresses progesterone. If insulin resistance is present, it alters sex hormone binding globulin and affects free hormone availability. If inflammation is high, receptor sensitivity can decline. If thyroid conversion is impaired, cellular responsiveness drops. So you can add estrogen, you can add progesterone, you can even add low-dose testosterone. But if the underlying metabolic and stress environment is unstable, the results are going to be inconsistent at best. Hormones amplify the system that they enter. If the system is chaotic, amplification creates more chaos. And this is why deep labs matter. Not just total estrogen, not just TSH, but free hormones, binding proteins, cortisol patterns, fasted insulin, inflammatory markers, lipid particle size, thyroid conversion markers. And this is where insurance companies fail women. They cover the bare minimum. They use reference ranges that are so broad, they're pretty much meaningless. Normal does not mean optimal. So let's address the fear narrative for a moment. The conversation around hormone replacement therapy has been distorted for decades. Early studies were misinterpreted. Risk profiles were exaggerated without context. Bioidentical hormone therapy, properly dosed and monitored, is not the same as what was studied in poorly designed trials years ago. Does that mean everybody needs it? No. Does it mean no one should use it? Absolutely not. Some women will thrive with proper estrogen and progesterone support during perimenopause or menopause. Some will benefit from low-dose testosterone, but it must be individualized. It must be monitored, adjusted. It's got to be integrated into a stable foundation of nutrition, training, sleep, and stress regulation. And here's the part that no one likes to say. If you are chronically undereating, overtraining, sleeping 5 hours, and living in sympathetic overdrive, hormone therapy will not fix that. It may blunt symptoms, but it will not solve root causes. The system must be stabilized first. Blood sugar steady, cortisol regulated, protein intake adequate, strength training consistent, and sleep protected. Then, and only then, hormone therapy becomes strategic and not reactive. And here's something else empowering. When done correctly, hormone optimization can improve bone density, muscle preservation, cognitive clarity, cognitive markers, and overall quality of life. But it's not step one. It's just part of the architecture. Now let's apply some structure to this, because information without sequence is just noise. And women over 40 do not need more noise. They need a framework. This is where the assess method becomes powerful, not as branding, as order. Analyze, stabilize, support, energize, stress regulate, and sustain. Let's walk through what that actually looks like for high-performing women over 40. First, analyze. No guessing, no influencer protocols, no, hey, try this supplement. We look at sleep patterns. We look at menstrual history or menopausal status. We evaluate strength levels. We assess body composition trends. We run comprehensive labs, thyroid panel, fasting insulin, inflammatory markers, lipid markers, sex hormones, cortisol patterns where appropriate. You cannot fix what you haven't measured. And you absolutely do not dismiss symptoms just because a lab report says normal. Second, we stabilize. And this is where most women skip ahead. Stabilization means blood sugar first. 3 structured meals, adequate protein, usually much more protein than you think. It means balanced carbohydrates, not elimination. It means dietary fat sufficient to support hormone production, not constant grazing. It means sleep window, protected, consistent wake time, morning light exposure, evening light reduction. It means nervous system stabilization. Reduce unnecessary stressors, build in parasympathetic recovery, stop stacking caffeine on top of sleep debt. None of this is flashy, but this phase alone often reduces brain fog and afternoon crashes significantly. And then we support. This is where we address thyroid conversion if needed, correct nutrient deficiencies, iron, magnesium, B vitamins. We address gut health if inflammation is present. We improve protein intake to support lean mass. We layer in intelligent supplementation if there is an evidence-based need. This is also where hormone therapy, if indicated, is introduced strategically, not emotionally. And after that, we energize. Strength training becomes structured. 3 to 4 sessions weekly, progressive overload, intentional rest, no annihilation workouts. We add low-intensity aerobic work to improve mitochondrial density. We fuel around training appropriately. Energy systems will then begin to expand. Confidence starts to return. And then we stress regulate. This is absolutely critical for women over 40. Lower progesterone means less natural buffering of stress. So structured recovery blocks, realistic workload boundaries, and nervous system downregulation practices become absolutely non-negotiable. Not spa rituals, performance tools. When cortisol rhythm stabilizes, thyroid signaling improves, sleep deepens, fat storage decreases. And then finally, we come to sustain, monitoring, adjusting, retesting labs when appropriate, progressing your strength programs, ensuring that metabolic markers remain stable. Sustain is what separates 6-week transformation from a decade of resilience. Here's another empowering fact. When this sequence is respected, women over 40 often experience a renaissance. Strength increases, body composition improves, energy stabilizes, brain clarity sharpens, your mood steadies. And all this happens not because they fought aging harder, but because they align their physiology. And the ones who commit to this approach, they stop chasing quick fixes. They stop shrinking themselves. They build. And next, let's bring this full circle into identity, because rebuilding energy and strength after 40 is not just biological. It's also psychological. And the women who thrive in this phase are the ones who shift how they see themselves. Identity is key because physiology is only half the equation. The other half is what a woman believes is possible for her body after 40 years of age. And this is where the damage has been done. For years, women have been told that midlife is decline. Metabolism slows, hormones crash, weight gain is inevitable, muscle loss is normal, and energy fades. So the expectation becomes survival. Just maintain. Don't gain too much. Don't get too tired. And accept the new normal. That narrative is completely wrong. And it's dangerous because your belief drives your behavior. If you believe decline is inevitable, you stop demanding better data. You stop building muscle aggressively. You stop eating enough protein. You stop training with intent. You lower the standard. And physiology follows leadership. Here's what I see when women approach this phase correctly. They get stronger than they've ever been. They build more muscle in their 40s and 50s than they had in their 30s. They regulate blood sugar better. They sleep deeper. They stabilize mood. They sharpen cognition, and they often outperform their younger selves. Not because their hormones are magically higher, it's because their systems are optimized. And here's another layer, one that most people ignore: confidence. There's something different about a woman over 40 who trains hard, eats with structure, protects sleep, and regulates stress. She moves differently. She leads differently. She negotiates differently, and she carries herself with an undeniable presence. Energy is not just about ATP production. It's about how you show up. When your blood sugar is stable, you don't snap at your team or your family. When your sleep is deep, you don't second guess decisions. When your strength is rising, you don't shrink physically or psychologically. Strength training after 40 is not aesthetic. It is psychological armor. And when brain energy improves, creativity returns. When inflammation drops, patience improves. When hormones stabilize, emotional volatility decreases. This is not vanity. This is leadership capacity. And now we're going to address the elephant in the room. Yes, there are absolutely biological realities in perimenopause and menopause. Absolutely. Estrogen fluctuates wildly before it declines. Progesterone drops earlier and faster. Testosterone declines gradually. These shifts change how the nervous system handles stress. They alter insulin sensitivity. They influence sleep depth. But none of that equals helplessness. It means adaptation. It means being strategic. It means measuring instead of guessing. And it absolutely does not mean starving yourself, overtraining, or accepting decline. The women who thrive in this phase, they understand something critical. They stop punishing their bodies and they start partnering with them. Instead of fighting fatigue with more cardio, they build muscle. Instead of restricting calories aggressively, they stabilize blood sugar. Instead of ignoring stress, they regulate it. And instead of obsessing over the scale, they track performance. This shift changes everything, because once you realize your body's not broken, it's just overwhelmed, the entire strategy changes. We are not fighting aging. We are rebuilding systems. We are restoring signaling. We are expanding capacity. And when you do that, vitality returns. Not because you reverse time, but because you stopped sabotaging the physiology that keeps you powerful. And now we're going to bring this all into direct practical application. What to monitor, what to prioritize first, what to avoid, and how to decide whether you're in a rebuild phase or a performance phase. If you're a high-performing woman over 40 and your energy is unstable, your strength is slipping, your body feels softer despite effort, and your brain feels slower than it used to, here's how you approach it. First, decide what phase you're in. Are you in a rebuild phase or are you in a performance phase? Rebuild means symptoms are present. Sleep is inconsistent. Energy crashes mid-afternoon. Training feels draining instead of empowering. Recovery is poor. Performance means your fundamentals are stable and you're building aggressively. Most women listening to this are in rebuild. And that's not a weakness. It's just a strategic starting point. So what do you monitor first? Let's start with sleep quality, not just hours. Are you waking at 2 or 3 a.m.? Are you wired at night but exhausted in the morning? Are you relying on caffeine to function? Answer those questions. Next, blood sugar stability. Do you crash after meals? Do you get irritable when you're hungry? Do you crave carbs at night? Then strength progression. Are your lifts increasing over time, or are you stuck using the same weights for months? Strength is a proxy for hormonal and metabolic resilience. Now, here's what you prioritize. Protein at every meal. Structured strength training 3 to 4 times a week. Intentional recovery days. Morning light exposure. Reduced evening stimulation. And stop chasing extremes. No crash diets, no marathon cardio sessions, no random supplement stacks because someone on social media swears by them. If labs are indicated, run comprehensive panels, not just TSH, not just total estrogen. Look at free hormones, look at thyroid conversion markers, look at insulin, inflammation, iron status. And if hormone therapy is appropriate, do it correctly. with real data, with real monitoring, with someone who understands physiology, not just reference ranges. Hormones are tools. They are not shortcuts. They amplify what your system is already doing. If your nervous system is dysregulated and your blood sugar is chaotic, adding hormones won't fix anything. They may actually magnify it. And now here is a slightly deeper truth. Women over 40 are not fragile. They're adaptive. They're powerful. And they're capable of building strength, resilience, and vitality at a level that shocks people who still believe in the decline after 40 myth. But that power requires structure. It requires systems. It requires refusing to accept that this is just how it is. And it requires leadership over your own physiology. The goal is not to feel 25 again. The goal is to feel powerful at 45, 55, 65, and beyond. Clear mind, stable energy, strong body, resilient nervous system. That is what true optimization looks like. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a woman in your life who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss future deep dives into physiology first performance. And if you're ready to stop guessing and rebuild your energy the right way, download the 30-day Executive Energy Reset Blueprint in the description. And if you're serious about structured, personalized optimization, reach out about coaching. Because midlife is not a decline phase. It's a recalibration phase. And when you rebuild the system correctly, the next decade can be your strongest yet. That's the standard. That is the mission. And that is what we're building here. I'll see you all very soon. Take care.